The US Treasury was hacked by the Chinese. What should the average investor do now? Hello, members, super savers, and bond course fans. I hope you're healthy and well, and welcome back to our weekly update. This super saver comment from January 1st about the recent break-in and stealing of documents at the US Treasury by Chinese state-sponsored hackers is what we'll be focusing on in the first part of our first weekly bond update of 2025. And specifically, here are the three topics that we'll be covering in today's video. 1. What were the Chinese hackers looking for at the US Treasury? And what are the implications for you and me as investors? 2. Which treasuries rose and which ones fell this past week? And 3. What are the yield expectations for the upcoming week's 3, 10, and 30-year treasury auctions? Plus, what are the highest yielding opportunities for new issue agencies, corporates, and brokered CDs right now? And as usual, here's our front of video disclaimer. For a detailed disclaimer, please refer to the end of this video. Let's dive in now, folks. What were the Chinese hackers looking for at the US Treasury? And what are the implications for you and me as investors? So this incident caught the public eye on the very last days of 2024, when many of us were probably preparing for our New Year kickoff celebrations. A Chinese state-sponsored actor hacked the U.S. Treasury's sanctions offices in what seems to have been an espionage operation, but separate from other Chinese efforts to insert malicious computer code into some of our critical infrastructure systems. The Chinese hackers were most likely trying to figure out which Chinese entities might be on the target list for future sanctions or financial penalties that the U.S. government might impose on them. For those of you who want more details, in this December 30th letter to lawmakers, the U.S. Treasury Department stated that earlier in the month, they found out that Chinese hackers had gotten past their computer security systems and stole documents in what the Treasury referred to as a major incident. On December 8th, 2024, Treasury was notified by a third-party software service provider, Beyond Trust, that a threat actor had gained access to a key used by the vendor to secure a cloud-based service used to remotely provide technical support for Treasury departmental offices, or DON users. With access to the stolen key, the threat actor was able to override the service's security, remotely access certain Treasury DO user workstations, and access certain unclassified documents maintained by those users. The letter goes on to say that the incident has been attributed to a China state-sponsored Advanced Persistent Threat, or APT actor. The compromised Beyond Trust service has been taken offline, and at this time, there is no evidence indicating the threat actor has continued access to Treasury information. This Washington Post article provides more details. Treasury Sanctions Office hacked by the Chinese government. Specifically, the hackers targeted the Office of Foreign Assets Control, the Office of Financial Research, and the Office of U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. And it was the undisclosed sources from the Washington Post article who stated that what would interest the Chinese government the most would be Chinese entities that our government may consider sanctioning financially, an important foreign policy tool used by Washington in managing their relationship with Beijing. In fact, just this past Friday, the Treasury issued a press release that one of the Treasury departments that was a victim of the recent Chinese hacking incident, the Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, the OFAC, sanctioned Integrity Technology Group, Incorporated, a Beijing-based cybersecurity company, for its role in multiple computer intrusions against U.S. victims. These incidents have been publicly attributed to Flax Typhoon, a Chinese malicious state-sponsored cyber group that has been active since at least 2021, often targeting organizations within U.S. critical infrastructure sectors. Spokespeople for China's foreign ministry and their embassy in Washington have, of course, denied their country's involvement in this recent hacking incident, referring to this as the U.S.'s smear attacks against China without any factual basis. The fact of the matter is that Chinese attempts to infiltrate our country's systems and weaken our national security are real and could even be considered the norm in recent times rather than the anomaly. Just last November, the FBI and the CISA, our country's cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency, reported that Chinese government-linked hackers broke into multiple telecom companies' networks and pulled surveillance data intended for American law enforcement agencies. The People's Republic of China affiliated actors have compromised multiple telecommunications companies to enable the theft of customer call records data, the compromise of private communications of a limited number of individuals who are primarily involved in government or political activity, and the copying of certain information that was subject to U.S. law enforcement requests pursuant to court orders. Telecom companies impacted included T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T, and Lumen. No real surprise then that our government regards China as a top threat in their annual threat assessment of the U.S. intelligence community. Other countries that top the list include Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Again, no surprise here. So, as I mentioned towards the beginning of today's video, the most recent incident was essentially a Chinese state-sponsored actor hacking the US Treasury's sanctions offices to most likely try to figure out which Chinese entities might be sanctioned in the near future and how much in penalties they would have to pay for all their previous hacks and other violations of our national security, human rights position, etc. Meaning that based on what we know now, our Treasury direct accounts and the Treasury investments that we hold there do not appear to have been impacted at this time, unless you are a high-ranking government official that may be of interest to the Chinese Secret Service, in which case, please speak to your supervisor. For the rest of us, this recent hacking incident does not seem to have a direct impact and does not require any action by us right now. That said, it can still teach us at least two things in general as investors. First, if the Treasury Department and major mobile networks can be hacked, so can we as individuals. As I mentioned in a recent Member Live, we live in a digital age, and much of our information is public or vulnerable, no matter how much we try to protect it. So do change your passwords regularly. Never share your personal information unless you trust the source. Turn on multi-factor authentication. Use an authenticator app. I could keep going, but essentially stay vigilant and on top of the keys to your life and your money. And the most basic level, even if you ever have a small inkling that something is sketchy, hang up the phone, don't open the email, and don't click on the link. Second, and somewhat related to the first, don't believe everything you read, hear, or see, and try to get the real facts if it seems important enough. Yes, there are bad actors out there who will try to steal money or information from you. But there are also bad actors out there who are much more subtle. They try to change the narrative of what's really true. They will tell you about the death of the dollar, the doom of our country, and the dumping of US Treasuries by China, when in fact, at the time of this taping, the reality is that the dollar continues to be strong. The US has 13 of the top 15 most valuable companies in the world according to market cap. And China is not doing well financially and needs money. That's why they're selling US Treasuries, not because they want to punish the US. We've already done many videos on all of these topics detailing the facts, and I've linked the most popular ones below in the first pinned comment for easy reference. So for those of you who email and comment regularly about financial news that freaks you out, please continue to email and comment, and to the extent that we can, we will try to dig up the actual facts for you and give you our perspective so that you can make your own informed decision. With that in mind, let's move on to the next section of today's update video. Which treasuries rose and which ones fell this past week? As we so often do at the end of the week, let's go to the Treasury's daily Treasury par yield curve rates page and compare Treasury yields from this past Friday versus the previous week. Here we have all the maturities of the Treasury issues at auction. Here's where yields stood this past Friday, and here's where yields stood at the end of the previous week. And here's the increase or decrease in rates over the past week. Increases in rates are shown in black, and decreases in rates are shown in red. Even markets slow down typically towards the end of the year, with 2 shortened trading weeks. And you can see that reflected here as well. On the extreme ends, the 1-month and the 30-year were unchanged. The 3-month was up slightly, while all the remaining maturities were down slightly, with the biggest drop seen in the 2-month T-bill at 8 basis points. Now, at this point in the video, we typically compare Treasury yields from this past Friday to the beginning of the year. But since it is the beginning of the year, we'll do things with a slight twist for January. Let's take a look at Treasury yields from this past Friday versus the same day 1 year ago in 2024. This row shows where rates ended this past Friday. This row shows where rates were on January 3rd, 2024. And this row shows the increase or decrease in rates over the past year. Again, increases in rates are shown in black and decreases in rates are shown in red. Treasury yields across all maturities, 3-year and up, are noticeably higher than where they were a year ago, with the biggest differences to be seen on the very long end, with the 10-year, 20-year, and 30-year. Whereas yields 2-year and under are lower than where they were a year ago, with the biggest differences to be seen on the 1 to 6 month T-bills, which is to be expected given that the Fed lowered rates on the short end several times last year. And one thing that catches the eye is that the yield curve that had been negative or inverted for so long has turned positive or normal, which means that you will finally get a higher interest rate again for lending out your money for longer, as it should be. As of January 3rd, 2025, at the extreme end, the difference between the 1-month versus the 30-year now stands at a positive 38 basis points versus a negative 149 basis points 12 months ago, when the yield curve was still inverted. And the widely used comparison of the 2-year versus the 10-year Treasury now stands at a positive 32 basis points versus a negative 42 basis points 12 months ago. You can find more details on these rates for any day of the week that the bond market is open on the Treasury's Daily Treasury Par Yield Curve Rates page, as I mentioned earlier. All sources are linked below in the first pinned comment. Do keep in mind that this overview gives you a general feeling for where rates currently stand along the maturity spectrum. The yields that you may get when you buy at a specific auction or from a specific broker, or when you sell, will likely differ a little bit from what's shown here. Now that we've covered Treasury yields from this past week, let's move on to the next section of this video, especially for those of you who are interested in agencies, corporates, and brokered CDs as well. What are the yield expectations for the upcoming week's 3, 10, and 30-year Treasury auctions? Plus, what are the highest yielding opportunities for new issue agencies, corporates, and brokered CDs right now? Here we are at Treasury Direct's upcoming auctions page. If we scroll down, we can see that all the weekly T-bill and CMB auctions are happening as usual. And if we scroll down further, we can see the 3-year T-note, the 10-year T-note, and the 30-year T-bond will be auctioned off as well this upcoming week. The 10-year T-note and the 30-year T-bond are reopening auctions, so we already know the coupon on those. At the time of this taping on Fidelity's platform, here's what the coupon and the expected yield are for the 3-year T-note auction. And here's what the coupon and the expected yield are for the 10-year T-note auction. And here's what the coupon and the expected yield are for the 30-year T-bond auction. Do keep in mind that all of these numbers can and usually do change all the way up to the time of the auction. So that was Treasuries. For those of you who may be interested in other types of bonds and CDs for a bit of a higher yield potentially, here's where the highest yielding new issue agency bonds stand at the time of this taping, with the highest yielding one at 6.125% from Federal Home Loan Banks, with a first call date in April 2025. Here's the CUSIP for those of you who may be interested. For corporate bonds, the list is fairly short on Fidelity this week, most likely due to the year-end lull. Here's where the highest yielding new issues stand at the moment, quite a bit lower than some of the new issue corporates we've shared with you in recent months. The highest yielding one is from Barclays Bank at 5.25%, with a first call date in January 2028. That said, the maturity date of 2035 may still make this one worth exploring for some of you. Here's the CUSIP for those of you who may be interested. For brokered CDs, unfortunately, the yields continue to be fairly unexciting, as they have been over the past few months. The highest yielding one is from Jonesboro State Bank at 4.6%, with a first call date in April 2025. All right, members, super savers, and bond course fans, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. And as always, if you want to really get up to speed on bond investing and building out your bond portfolio while rates are still quite attractive, then check out this video here on our beginner and intermediate bond courses, which we are in the process of updating. Or come join our live sessions in January. Our next Bond Beginners live date will be set shortly. Bond Beginners, folks, please look out for an email from us over the next few days so that you can select your preferred date for the live. And our next YouTube member live will be on Sunday, January 26th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Pacific Time. We'll be diving deeper into this month's upcoming 2, 5, and 7-year Treasury auctions and other new issue bond offerings. I've also linked all the details on our bond courses and YouTube Super Saver membership below this video for your convenience. Good luck to everyone who's planning on picking up some bonds and or CDs this coming week. And see you again very soon with more brand new wealth building content for your financial journey.